Welcome to the Better Together podcast, where we look for ways we can work together to advance the gospel of Jesus Christ. Today, I have with us Dr. Doug Earls. He's a good friend of mine. He and his wife and his daughter, who's one of my favorite coffee baristas, by the way, are ministering in Missouri. They've been there really. He has his whole life. You might know him from Calvary Chapel, ministering there as senior pastor for over 33 years. And now he's working as retiree pastor and pastor emeritus where Mark Elliott's at. And so, brother Doug, it is just great to have you with us. We have great respect for you. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Oh, Eddie, it's my privilege. It's my pleasure.
Well, when I see you, I have to tell you, I start craving coffee. So you may know why that is from Miss Anna.
I do.
She's probably got some coffee somewhere, but and our listeners may not know that is Mr. Doug and Miss Betsy's daughter, who is quite effective, quite helpful. But I wanted to start out this afternoon by just asking you to tell us a bit about your ministry. What a ministry you've had at Calvary Chapel, and even before that. So give us, our listeners, a sense of your ministry there, brother.
Well, we've been here for 36 years. That's a long time, and it's been such a blessing. But there's a history of how we ended up here, and I'll share some more in my sermon at the National. But I went for a year where I left ministry when we had our daughter Anna. She had Down syndrome, and our bills were just so high. So I felt like I needed to do something to be able to do the therapies and things that she needed. And so I went back to school to become a family therapist, and it was the most miserable year of my life. And so Betsy and I, one day she told me, she says, Doug, you never smile, you're never happy anymore, everything's so serious. And we both broke down and cried and prayed, and we prayed for specific things. I said, I feel like I need to go back to pastoring. And so we prayed for a church that's a new work that wanted to grow and that we can make a long-term commitment to it. And with just in a month's time, we were contacted by some of the leaders here at Buffalo at Calvary Chapel, and that's where it all started. And our first Sunday that we were here, there were less than 30 people, but they were good people, and they were just needing a vision. And so we began working and praying and developing leaders at our church, and the church started growing, and we're in a small town, in a small community, and we developed a good reputation in the community because we tried to do the right things for the community that Christ would want us to do. And so as we grew, we started adding staff eventually, and so all of our staff we called from within our church, and so that's been such a wonderful thing. And so God led us into many different ministries, but in all the ministries, it seemed like He interrupted our life a little bit. I always liked my ducks right in a row, but God would sometimes move my ducks around. And so we began our ministry in Panama many years ago, and that was because of a challenge by Stan Bunch to come and partner with them. And that was a stretch for me because I get lost in Buffalo. And so when I would go to Panama to teach, some of the elderly ladies would always be praying for me and asking for prayer, and they wanted to put a tag on me: if found, please return to Calvary Chapel in Buffalo, Missouri. But that was a wonderful thing, and then we began to see God work, and we prayed for God to send workers in the harvest. The harvest was there, and God sent us so many wonderful people, and God allowed us to help mentor them. And I always said throughout the years that when somebody could pastor Calvary Chapel better, I would step down. And that day came 3 years ago. For health reasons, I had multiple surgeries and some conditions that weren't going to go away. And I knew that I needed to step down from that. But we were so fortunate. Brother Mark just started right off, and the church continued to grow. Brother Brandon had been with us for almost 20 years, Mark for over 25. And so everything's just went extremely well with that. I've always tried to be in the center of God's will. There's been times where I felt like I wasn't, but I always said, God, what do I need to do? And a lot of times my first response to things would be no, but then as I prayed about it, God would say, it's yes. And so our church has always had good harmony. We're real thankful for that. And we have seen, like I said, Him do some marvelous, marvelous things. I'm going to get a little water. My throat's getting dry here.
Well, you're doing so good, and really, you're giving our listeners a good feel of who you are, and why we have you speaking to us, preaching to us on Monday evening. But I do want to kind of go back there a little bit. You kind of alluded to how your church just has really grown in the community, and so I want our listeners to know. I think I have preached at your church twice.
Yes.
And one of the things that you'll note if you ever go and visit there in Buffalo, it's not a big city, but you would not know that from attending church there on Sunday. So you're running multiple services,
Yes.
multiple activities, and lots of people in there. The other thing I noticed is I think it's Thursdays. You've got the food bank or the different
On
things
every
going on
Tuesday, ever on once a month for on
once
the
a
third
month.
Tuesday. Mhm.
And so you've got things for people to do within the church.
Yes.
They're ministering to people outside the church. And then I have interacted with Mark the whole way through because I think I went when you were pastor, and then
Yes.
I think after you had stepped down and he had become the senior pastor. And I believe I've even written about what a smooth transition that was, and
Was.
how you guys have brought up your own pastors in your church in Buffalo, Missouri, a place of a small population. So, way to go, brother Doug. And
Well, I give God the glory.
I know you do, but you guys, you and Miss Betsy have listened to the Lord and have worked, and so we give honor where honor is due. And just to say it, this is why our team wanted you to speak on Monday night. So we think it's a good model. I mean, what has happened there in Buffalo, Missouri, I think we didn't even get into it, but you've got a heart for training people. You were instrumental, I think, you with the Palmer Institute, which is probably part of what you were doing in Panama.
Yes.
So you have taught about discipleship and helped churches, and you guys have done it there. So we thank you for that, brother. Thank you.
I'm really thankful that the church allowed me to develop the Palmer Institute. And for a 10-year period, I traveled extensively to a lot of different states and to Panama. And it was always such a wonderful experience. And it was during that time I had the weirdest accident. I fell off a stick horse and broke my shoulder, but I tore off my subscapularius and it wouldn't stay on. So after 3 major surgeries, they finally said, we'll put it together for you to eat and write, and that's all. But during that time frame, it was worked out really well because I couldn't carry my bag, so Mark went with me. And so I put Mark to work, and
Yeah.
which was wonderful, and
Yeah.
he did such a great job, and it helped the two of us to bond
Yeah.
more as we traveled together. And and I'm so, like I said, so thankful the church allowed me to do that traveling and to do that training in Missouri and Illinois, Florida, Michigan, and then was able to train all the state directors too in Nashville. So that was
Great. And it would sound like that was a bad thing. I know it was a bad thing what happened to you, but it did. I think I can hear you saying it helped. It helped what has happened today. In other words, the
It has.
gospel continued. You and Mark continued to grow, and here we are. Well, we are excited about you preaching for us on Monday evening, and you've kind of given us a little glimpse of what's happening, but you're speaking from Jonah chapter 2. It is not a feel good chapter in the Bible. Probably if you had said, hey, we want you to speak at the national, speak on what you want, I don't bet you would have chosen Jonah chapter 2. So tell
No,
us a bit
probably
about,
not.
yeah, that's what I figured. So
Um,
tell us a bit about the message you've kind of been preparing and working on that the Lord's laid on your heart for our people that night.
Well, if you look at Jonah, it's one of the smallest books. It's one of the prophetic books, but it's this the thing about Jonah is it's really about Jonah more than this message. And it starts off with God coming to Jonah with a word and to go to Nineveh, and we know he ran and then ended up in the belly of the fish because of his disobedience. But then it ends with God reminding Jonah of all the people that were saved and asked him if it was what he thought of that, and we don't know that answer. But that second chapter is when Jonah finally hit bottom. He had been disobedient. He had went the wrong direction. Matter of fact, the opposite direction of where God told him to be. And now all of a sudden he finds himself in the belly of this fish. And there he finally, as he couldn't go any lower than that, he started looking up. And he started doing the most essential thing for us as Christians. He started praying. And as he began to pray, we find him repenting and recommitting. And, we won't get ahead of ourselves. The next chapter, God came a second time, and Jonah did it and was probably the most effective evangelist ever, but yet was so disappointed because he had a problem of not liking the Ninevites and didn't want them to be a part of God's kingdom. And if we're not careful, boy, there's some parallels there for us as Christians too. We need to be so careful of marking people off because Jesus died for the whole world. That means every race, every color, everyone in the world.
That's great. Well, I can't wait to hear it. I'm looking forward to you preaching to us. And it's clear you have spent a lot of time already preparing and I know praying and getting ready. I do wonder, as our listeners hear this, what requests do you have? What would you ask them to pray for you about?
Yeah, please pray for me that I can bring the word in a way that's understandable, in a word that's transparent, in a way that God empowers that to just touch lives, because we're in a position now as Christians where we have to be willing to do whatever God says. And sometimes we look at life and we think of life as my way or your way, but it's got to be God's way. And Jonah got into trouble because he forgot that his life, he had been called as a prophet, he belonged to the Lord. And all of a sudden, he decided to do what he wanted. And we as Christians, we need to be sold out to the Lord. We need to die in the flesh and let God work in a great and a marvelous way because he has something for each one of us to do. And even though we might think that we've spoiled it, and we're going to look at some of the excuses and false beliefs of God's call in the message, but God does call. He's a calling God, but he wants us to have that right relationship with him. And aren't you glad that we can have that relationship with Jesus Christ? We'll never be perfect until we get to heaven. But with the Holy Spirit's help, we can be led by him. He will lead us to people. We can see people's life changed. We can see communities changed. We can see the world changed for the Lord if we just really would be totally sold out to Jesus and say, Jesus, I want to do what you want me to do, no matter what the cost. Even if it costs my life, I'm willing to do that.
That's great. I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it. And I appreciate what you have already done as a pastor and how you've served in the state of Missouri and everything with the Palmer Institute. And thank you for serving us this way too, Dr. Earls. This is going to be exciting. It's going to be a great time. And so looking forward to our people being able to hear this message. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Eddie, and God bless you in your ministry.
We want to thank you too for taking the time to be with us today. Maybe you know someone that would benefit from this podcast. I encourage you to share it with them. I also encourage you to like it and try to disseminate it if you possibly can. Remember, every little thing we do, it really does matter. We truly are better when we work together. We're better together.